President Cyril Ramaphosa is currently visiting a number of sites identified as COVID-19 facilities in Gauteng. He began with a walkabout at the Nasrec Expo Centre in Johannesburg, this accompanied by Gauteng Premier David Makhura earlier on today. But right now, he is at the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, and ENCA's Cyril Ramaphosa is there and joins us now, of course, to give us an update. Cyril, I mean, we saw you, of course, doing a walkabout with the President earlier on at Nasrec, looking into, that quarantine site where those bays and isolation sites will be hosting some of the patients who've contracted coronavirus. But right now, Charlotte Maxeke, what's expected to be the agenda there?
Well, Dumelo, first of all, we have not been allowed as the media to go inside the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. And I mean, you can understand why. The provincial government confirming that 6 pharmacists here at this hospital tested positive for COVID. They confirmed that yesterday. And there are people who have passed away, unfortunately, Dumelo, because of the COVID-19 pandemic here at this very hospital. So the president did go inside with other delegates, including the Premier of Gauteng, David Makhura, the MEC of Health in Gauteng, Dr. Bandile Masugu, as well as the MEC of Infrastructure, Tasmin Mudara. They are inside right now, the hospital. I think it's for our own safety that they didn't allow us to go in, because, of course, the President will be taking a look at, the isolation units here, the quarantine units here, as well as the ICU beds for those who are, showing symptoms that are, at a very advanced stage for COVID-19. So we are at the hospital. We were met, unfortunately, the nurses did go inside. That's why I'm looking around a little bit. We were met here by a group of nurses and doctors who are, they were displaying their PPE and it shows that, they have received their PPE here at Charlotte Maxeke. They were in suits from head to toe, blue suits from head to toe, plastic aprons, for instance, as well as face masks and gloves. So we are waiting for the President to come out. We were told by the Presidency that this is the point where he will be speaking to us and addressing us as the media, and where we can pose some questions.
What's that hospital like at the moment, Masiko? Because, for context, it's also important for us to point out that it's not just the media that's not been allowed in there. My understanding is that Charlotte Maxeke has actually been quite stringent with allowing anyone inside the facilities, including people who are visiting people who are admitted in that hospital. There are some really stringent conditions that are at play there. In fact, suspended some of those visits.
That's correct, Tilasisa. And if I may just come off shot so that I can show you, I'm not sure if you can see, beyond the media contingency, but the door that was used by the President to get into the hospital is closed. You cannot just get in or out of the hospital. If you look further to the right, there is a green tent, an army green tent. This is where people who are coming to the hospital are sanitized and given some of that PPE, that protective gear, to make sure that they go in there protected if they need to go in there, because of course it has to be a very important issue that you are going into the hospital for. So that's we are seeing very less people coming into this hospital. It is one of the big hospitals that we have in the country, but we realize that even in terms of vehicles and taxis that are coming into the premises of Charlotte Maxeke with either patients or even people who want to see family members who are here, whether it's for COVID-19 or other illnesses, because obviously this is a hospital, it's not COVID-19 only that they are dealing with. They are not being allowed in, and if you have to go in, you are sanitized. I just want to show you, if it's possible, this doctor, if my colleague Teddy could just take you to, if you look at the doctor that is leading people into the emergency ward, he is wearing what I was describing to you, that blue uniform that he has to wear, that plastic apron, as well as the face mask, and basically that mask that not only covers his mouth but his whole face. So that's those are the doctors that I was and nurses that I was describing to you earlier on, when I was saying that those are the doctors and nurses that met us when we arrived here today to
Yeah, and perhaps Maseko, just to reflect on the importance of the President's trip to all these sites. I mean, starting at Nasrec and now being at Charlotte Maxeke. I mean, Gauteng is still one of the epicenters of the virus, with hotspots being identified within Gauteng, namely such as Alexandra, Sandton, Parktown North, Ekurhuleni, Randburg. These are just some areas with which we're seeing, of course, cases of coronavirus there. So the President, of course, being briefed by the Gauteng Premier that they're doing all they can to ensure that, of course, that number does not increase. They try to flatten that curve within the province, and these are some of their efforts as far as the health department is concerned.
Definitely, Dumelo. I mean, besides the fact that this morning the Western Cape surpassed Gauteng with those numbers in terms of us being the epicenter, we were the epicenter for quite a long time until this morning, since we had our patient zero confirmed here in March, in mid-March. So they are trying, as the Gauteng government, and he did, the Premier, that is, did give a presentation to the President, for instance, showing him that when the lockdown began, and I remember, Tumelo, I was in the Johannesburg CBD on that first day of the lockdown, and we were seeing the soldiers taking, the homeless people to shelters. Some of those included schools. He was saying that during that time they had about 15,000 homeless people in those different shelters, and that number has gone down to 3,000 homeless people in these shelters. He says that they are trying to locate exactly where these homeless people are running off to, instead of staying at these shelters, to make sure that they have food and a place to sleep and things like that. He was also telling the President, Dumelo, that in Gauteng so far, about 44 government employees, that is both in the national, who are employed in both the national and provincial government, have tested positive for COVID-19. This includes, Dumelo, doctors, nurses, and police, so the essential service workers. And he was saying that, with the unit that we were at earlier on at the Nasrec Expo Centre, they want to eventually have 2,200 beds for isolation and quarantine to help make sure that everybody is taken care of.
All right, thank you for that. Live for us at the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. That is ENCA's Maseko Rahlaga.